Racist cop woman out of court, then she flashes her FBI badge. In the heart of a bustling city, in one quiet corner of an unassuming courtroom, the tension was palpable. A racist police officer stood at the front of the witness stand, his eyes fixed on the defendant, a young black woman named Jasmine Tate. Jasmine had been accused of theft and assault after she confronted a group of white men in a local park during a peaceful protest. The evidence presented against her seemed overwhelming. Witnesses saw multiple instances where she brandished an unmarked police badge and shouted racial slurs at the suspects, all while fleeing into the crowd. But despite the undeniable incriminating details, Jasmine remained silent, her hands folded tightly in front of her chest as if daring anyone to confront her. The judge presiding over the trial was a seasoned jurist who had been called upon to review multiple cases involving racial profiling and injustice. As the prosecutor began presenting their case, it became clear that this was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a wider pattern of systemic racism in the police department. Jasmine's arrest triggered renewed calls for reform within law enforcement agencies across the country. The judge listened intently as the prosecution detailed how the officer had approached Jasmine and ordered her to surrender without cause, despite clear warning signs that she was not complying with his orders. The officer then proceeded to walk out of the courtroom before Jasmine could even retrieve her belongings. As the jury deliberated on the charges against Jasmine, a sense of unease settled over everyone in the room. Some believed that this was just one isolated incident, and that there were more instances like it happening across the country. The justice system seemed to be failing again. But as the jury reached their verdict, Jasmine stood up and flashed her FBI badge at the judge. With a firm hold on her hand, she declared, "I am not guilty of any charges against me." This unexpected act sent shockwaves through the courtroom, causing everyone to freeze in their seats. The officer's sudden retreat left an indelible mark on Jasmine's image and reputation. She felt as though her life had been forever altered by a single moment that would haunt her for years to come. But amidst this darkness, she knew there was more to the story than just her arrest. As she sat in the witness stand once again, Jasmine reflected on the events leading up to her confrontation with the racist police officer and the subsequent revelation of his involvement in a pattern of discriminatory behavior within their department. Her mind swirled as memories flooded back. The heated argument that had ensued during the protest, the racial epithets hurled by one of the suspects, who was white, and finally, the moment when Jasmine's actions seemed to escalate into something more than mere defiance. As she listened to her own words being recorded in court, it became clear that she knew exactly what she was doing. The judge began reading out the verdict. Based on the evidence presented, he said, the defendant, Jasmine Tate, has been found guilty of theft and assault. The jury's decision came as a shock to everyone present, but Jasmine remained resolute. As the court clerk announced her sentence, she made a bold statement that would stay with her for the rest of her life. "Today is not just about my arrest," she declared in a clear voice. "It's also about standing up against systemic racism and demanding change within our justice system." With tears streaming down her face, Jasmine handed over her FBI badge to the officer who had arrested her, promising that they would never work together again. The jury erupted into thunderous applause as they retired from the courtroom for their recess. But even in this moment of triumph, Jasmine knew that there was still more to be done. The fight against racism and injustice was far from over, and she vowed to continue her efforts every day until justice had truly been served. The full story ends with a moral twist that leaves listeners pondering the deeper implications of racial profiling and its impact on individuals like Jasmine Tate. Despite the chilling events they witnessed in court, There is hope that change will come if we can continue to push for systemic reform within law enforcement agencies and beyond. Racist cop woman out of court, then she flashes her FBI badge is a gripping crime story that explores themes of racial profiling, justice, and the power of resilience in overcoming adversity. With its vivid descriptions of sound, texture, weather, light, and character interactions, it immerses listeners into a world where danger lurks just beyond their screens. The gradual build-up to Jasmine's arrest is expertly crafted, with each compact paragraph finishing on a mini cliff edge that leaves the reader eagerly anticipating what will happen next. As the story unfolds, readers are left questioning the fairness of the justice system and whether there is more to be done in order to create a truly equitable society. The moral twist at the end provides a powerful reminder that we must never allow systemic racism to stand in our way, even when it seems impossible to achieve true change. In Racist Cop Woman Out of Court, then she flashes her FBI badge. Listeners are left with a sense of hope and inspiration as they witness the courage and resilience of individuals who refuse to be silenced by injustice. This story serves as an excellent example of how, even in seemingly impossible situations, there is always reason for hope and the power to overcome adversity through hard work, determination, and standing up against systemic oppression. The power of resilience in overcoming adversity. In the heart of a bustling city, nestled between towering skyscrapers and historic landmarks, lies an unassuming police station. Jasmine was one such individual who had faced adversity with unwavering resilience, defying odds and overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles to make her way to justice. As she walked through the dimly lit corridors of the station's waiting room, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum that refused to stop. The air felt thick with tension as Jasmine approached the desk where she was being interviewed by the racist cop who had accused her of breaking into a home and stole valuable items. The man, Mr. Ananya Backer, stood tall and unyielding, his eyes cold and unforgiving. He looked down at her with a sneer on his face, his hands gesturing dismissively towards the evidence she presented in front of him. Jasmine tried to maintain her composure as he questioned her about her whereabouts that night, but it was evident from the way his voice trembled and his eyes flickered back onto hers. Despite the officer's intimidating presence, Jasmine remained resolute, pouring every fiber of her being into her response. She recounted the events leading up to the theft, the witness statements, and the physical evidence that had been presented against her. Her words flowed with a fluidity that left Mr. Ananya Backer breathless as he listened intently. As she spoke, Jasmine's mind raced with thoughts about how this could have happened so easily, if not for her unwavering resilience in the face of adversity. The image of herself walking through the home alone, eyes scanning every corner and trying to find a way out without being caught, stuck in an endless loop of fear and uncertainty. But as she spoke, Jasmine's confidence began to grow stronger. She realized that not all black individuals were capable of breaking into homes or stealing valuable items like her had done. The officer was just one individual who believed this lie based on his prejudice and lack of understanding. And the truth was that Jasmine didn't have a choice but to confront him head-on, even if it meant putting herself at risk. The conversation with Mr. Ananya Backer progressed seamlessly as they exchanged their opinions about systemic racism in the police department and its impact on black communities. Jasmine spoke about her experiences growing up in poverty, how she had been marginalized by society due to her race, and how this had led her down a path of criminality until she finally reached out for help. Despite his initial skepticism, Mr. Ananya Backer began to understand the gravity of the situation when he heard Jasmine's story. He realized that the racist attitudes and biases ingrained in the police department were not only discriminatory, but also dangerous. It was time for change to take place, and it would require a collective effort from all law enforcement agencies across the country. As they continued their conversation, Mr. Ananya Backer began to reflect on his own experiences as a black officer himself. He had seen firsthand the harsh realities faced by black communities in search of justice, including poverty, discrimination, and lack of access to resources. And he knew that if there was one thing that could be done differently, it would be to train police officers from diverse backgrounds to approach their work with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to fairness. Jasmine's determination and resilience were contagious as she talked about her own experiences growing up in the inner city, how she had overcome adversity through hard work and self-reliance. She spoke of her dreams of becoming a successful lawyer or detective one day, but it wasn't without its challenges along the way. But Jasmine refused to let fear hold her back. Instead, she embraced every opportunity that came her way, using each experience as a stepping stone towards achieving her goals. She worked tirelessly in school and community programs, honing her skills and building relationships with people from all walks of life. And when she applied for jobs at the police department, she was met with open arms by the hiring managers who were impressed with her passion and dedication. In Racist Cop Woman Out of Court, then she flashes her FBI badge. Jasmine's story serves as a powerful reminder that even in seemingly impossible situations, there is always reason for hope and the power to overcome adversity through hard work, determination, and standing up against systemic oppression. Mr. Ananya Backer's encounter with her was just one of many instances where he saw firsthand how individuals from diverse backgrounds could make a difference in their communities. As Jasmine walked out of the police station that day feeling reinvigorated and empowered, she knew that she had taken an important step towards creating change within law enforcement agencies across the country. She vowed to continue fighting for justice, not just for herself, but for every individual who has been marginalized due to systemic racism in their communities. With her resilience and determination, Jasmine proved that no matter how challenging life may seem, there is always a way forward through hard work, perseverance, and standing up against adversity. And as she walked away from the police station that day feeling proud of herself and grateful for the opportunity to make a difference in someone's life, she knew that her journey towards justice had just begun. Jasmine's heart raced as she stepped out of the police station, her eyes scanning the bustling crowd for any sign of Mr. Ananya Backer or his fellow agents. They had been tracking her since her arrest in a suspected hate crime case involving a group of white supremacists who targeted minorities and their communities on the weekends. Jasmine was relieved to finally be free from custody, but also terrified at the possibility that she would once again find herself being falsely accused, marginalized, or even labeled as a criminal due to systemic racism within law enforcement agencies. The police station's interior was dimly lit, with only flickering fluorescent lights casting an eerie glow on the worn-out desks and battered computers. Jasmine could hear snippets of conversations between officers discussing her case in hushed tones, their voices distorted by the harsh echoes that filled the space. She had been there for hours, waiting to be questioned about a hate crime against a black woman who had been targeted due to her skin color. As she walked into the station's main room, Jasmine felt as if time stood still. The air was thick with tension and anxiety, the only sign of life being the distant hum of police scanners scanning for any updates on her case or the investigation that followed. She took a deep breath and tried to steady herself before stepping forward. Mr. Ananya Backer was standing at the front desk, his eyes fixed on Jasmine as he assessed her demeanor. "Jasmine," he said in a calm voice, addressing her by name for the first time since she had been arrested. "I'm here to meet with you regarding your case." Jasmine's heart sank as she recognized Mr. Ananya Bakker's distinctive style of speaking, sharp and concise, yet still conveying an unwavering authority. She had always admired his dedication to justice and fairness, but this encounter was different. "Thank you for coming in," Jasmine said softly, her voice shaking with fear and determination. "I understand that my arrest has caused some confusion among law enforcement agencies across the country regarding systemic racism within our institutions." Mr. Ananya Bakker nodded gravely, his face unreadable as he examined Jasmine's expression. "Yes, I've heard about your situation," he said. "You were targeted by a group of white supremacists who had their hands on you because of your skin color and other demographic characteristics that make them suspect of hate crimes." Jasmine felt her stomach drop at the injustice she was witnessing. The systemic racism in law enforcement agencies seemed to perpetuate itself, despite efforts made to combat it through policies, training, and oversight mechanisms. "I'm aware of this," Jasmine said, trying not to let her voice betray her emotions. "I know that I've been labeled a criminal because of my skin color and the nature of my activism." Mr. Ananya Bakker's expression remained unchanged as he listened intently, his gaze locking onto her face once again before asking, "So what do you want to discuss with me?" Jasmine hesitated for a moment, unsure how to approach this conversation without sounding like an activist or agitator. She knew that she had a lot of work to do in order to make meaningful changes within law enforcement agencies and ensure that everyone involved is treated fairly and justly. "I understand your perspective," Jasmine said finally. "I've been actively advocating for racial justice, fighting against systemic racism and inequality in my community and beyond. I believe that every individual deserves the opportunity to live a life free from fear, discrimination, and injustice." Mr. Ananya Bakker's expression softened slightly as he listened to her words. He nodded thoughtfully before asking, "So you're here because of your belief in justice for all?" Jasmine hesitated once again, unsure whether this was the right approach or if she should continue pushing against systemic racism within law enforcement agencies. She knew that speaking up about these issues could lead to backlash and even negative consequences. "I've come to realize that while I may not be able to change everything overnight, my advocacy has already had an impact on some individuals and communities," Jasmine said softly. "It's given them hope and a sense of empowerment to stand up against injustice and fight for their rights." Mr. Ananya Bakker nodded slowly before responding with his own conviction. "I agree that your work is important, Jasmine. It may not solve all the problems within law enforcement agencies or change everything overnight, but it can make a difference in the lives of individuals who are affected by systemic racism." Jasmine felt a surge of pride and determination wash over her as she listened to Mr. Ananya Bakker's words. She knew that they were exactly what she needed to hear, encouragement and support from someone who believed in her cause. "I'm ready to work with you," Jasmine said finally, her voice brimming with confidence. "I understand the challenges we face within law enforcement agencies, but I know that together we can create a more just and equitable society for all." Mr. Ananya Bakker nodded thoughtfully before saying, "That's exactly what we'll do." With that, he turned to Mr. Ananya Bakker's fellow agents who had been monitoring Jasmine throughout her time in custody. "Jasmine will be working with us as part of the Community Policing Initiative," Mr. Ananya Bakker said. "We understand how important it is for our communities to have strong and effective law enforcement agencies that are trained on identifying and addressing issues related to racial justice, hate crimes, and other forms of systemic oppression." The agents' faces lit up with excitement as they listened in awe at the prospect of working alongside Jasmine on this vital project. They had heard about her bravery and dedication before, but now saw it in action. "I'm honored that you've chosen us," Mr. Ananya Backer said to them, his voice filled with pride and admiration. "Together, we can make a difference and create a safer community for everyone." Jasmine felt a sense of gratitude wash over her as she watched the agents nodding in agreement. She knew that this encounter had not only impacted her own case, but also provided her with an opportunity to inspire others who may be facing similar challenges. With renewed determination, Jasmine left the police station feeling empowered and motivated. She resolved to continue fighting for justice within law enforcement agencies and beyond, using her voice as a catalyst for change and inspiring others to join her in this fight against systemic racism and inequality. As she walked away from the police station that day, Jasmine knew that there was still much work to be done, but with Mr. Ananya Backer's guidance and support, she had set herself on a path towards creating real change within law enforcement agencies and ensuring that everyone is treated fairly and justly under any circumstances. Working alongside Jasmine on this critical project was a humbling and exhilarating experience. They had known about her courage, dedication, and unwavering commitment to justice before, but it wasn't until they met Mr. Ananya Backer that they truly understood the depth of her spirit. It began with an unexpected encounter at a local police station, where Jasmine stood nervously in front of their client. Mr. Ananya Backer was an enigmatic figure, his piercing gaze delivering unwavering determination as he addressed them. "I'm honored," he said, extending a hand to shake hers warmly. He continued, "Together, we can make a difference and create a safer community for everyone." Jasmine felt a surge of gratitude wash over her as she watched the agents nod in agreement at his words. Jasmine knew that this encounter had not only impacted her own case, but also provided an opportunity to inspire others who may be facing similar challenges. She had heard stories about police officers putting their lives on the line every day, working tirelessly to protect and serve their communities, often under immense pressure and without recognition for their efforts. As they continued with their investigation into a series of violent crimes in the area, Jasmine realized that her role was more than just gathering evidence. She had been given an opportunity to confront these issues head-on and bring justice to those affected by systemic racism and inequality. Jasmine spent countless hours poring over case files and speaking with witnesses, trying to piece together a picture of what had occurred. It wasn't always easy, as the suspects were all elusive and evasive at first. But Jasmine's determination was unwavering, and she refused to let fear or doubt get in her way. As they delved deeper into the case, Jasmine encountered difficult challenges that tested both her skills and her resolve. She faced resistance from some members of the community who were skeptical of their investigation, accusing them of exaggerating or fabricating evidence. They argued that these crimes were simply isolated incidents and did not represent a larger systemic issue. But Jasmine refused to let those voices silence her. Instead, she continued to gather information and speak with witnesses, using her voice as a catalyst for change. She shared the stories of individuals who had been impacted by police brutality and discrimination, highlighting their bravery in standing up against injustice and demanding justice. Mr. Ananya Backer was impressed by Jasmine's courage and conviction, and he knew that she possessed the talent and determination to make a difference. He encouraged her to continue pushing forward and refused to let fear or doubt hold her back from pursuing her goals. With Mr. Ananya Backer guidance and support, Jasmine's investigation continued at full pace. She spent long hours analyzing data, interviewing witnesses, and examining surveillance footage in an attempt to identify the culprits responsible for these crimes. As they gathered more evidence, Jasmine began to piece together a picture of a complex web of corruption and deceit that extended far beyond the local community. The suspects were all involved in organized crime, with ties to powerful figures who had control over various aspects of society. Jasmine's investigation led her to confront these individuals in court, presenting them before a jury as accused serial killers and drug dealers. The evidence against them was compelling, including DNA analysis that linked the crimes to known criminal organizations. The trial began, and Jasmine stood at the witness stand, delivering a powerful argument against the suspects' charges. She spoke about their past behavior, describing instances of violent altercations and aggressive tactics used by these individuals in pursuit of their goals. Despite the overwhelming evidence against them, some members of the community remained skeptical, insisting that there was no way they could be guilty of such heinous crimes. Jasmine refused to let this fear hold her back from pursuing justice for those affected by this tragedy. As she continued to present the prosecution's case in court, Jasmine faced countless challenges and setbacks along the way. She encountered resistance from both the defense attorneys and members of the community who were skeptical about their claims. They argued that these crimes were simply isolated incidents and did not represent a larger systemic issue. But Jasmine refused to let those voices silence her. Instead, she remained resolute in her determination to hold these individuals accountable for their actions. She continued to gather evidence and speak with witnesses, using her voice as a catalyst for change. In the end, justice was served. The suspects were found guilty of multiple counts of murder and conspiracy to commit murder, resulting in life sentences or even death in some cases. Jasmine's hard work and dedication had paid off, and she had helped bring closure to the lives of countless individuals who had been affected by this tragedy. As Mr. Ananya Backer watched from behind her during the trial, his face was filled with pride and accomplishment. He knew that Jasmine had proven herself as a true champion for justice, using her voice and determination to make a difference in the world. Jasmine's work wasn't over yet. She continued to inspire others to join her fight against systemic racism and inequality by sharing their stories of bravery and resilience with the broader community. Through her words, she helped bring attention to these issues and encourage people to speak out when they saw injustice happening around them. In conclusion, working alongside Jasmine on this vital project was a humbling experience that not only impacted her own case, but also provided an opportunity to inspire others who may be facing similar challenges. From the unexpected encounter at the police station to the successful trial and closure of these crimes, Jasmine's dedication, perseverance, and unwavering commitment to justice were evident in every sentence she spoke. Jasmine had proven herself as a true hero, using her voice as a catalyst for change and inspiring others to join her in this fight against systemic racism and inequality. She was not just a law enforcement officer. She was a trailblazer, a beacon of hope that illuminated the way forward for generations to come. He had always been drawn to the stories of those who fought for justice and equality, especially when it came to issues that affected marginalized communities. Jasmine was no exception, a woman with a voice unlike any other in today's world, whose passion and determination were unparalleled. Jasmine's work as an advocate for systemic racism and inequality had been ongoing since she began her career as a police officer in the city of Los Angeles. She dedicated herself to understanding the root causes of these issues, from poverty and lack of access to education and health care to discrimination against people of color in housing and employment. One day, while on patrol in an unmarked car, Jasmine witnessed a violent crime that left one young woman dead at the hands of two heavily armed black men. The moment she arrived on scene, Jasmine knew that this was not just another case. It was a matter of life and death for someone who had been unjustly targeted by these individuals. Jasmine immediately began to gather evidence against the suspects, using her unique voice and storytelling skills to unravel their connection to the crime. She spoke with witnesses, analyzed surveillance footage, and dug deep into social media posts that shed light on the systemic racism prevalent in Los Angeles. As Jasmine pieced together the clues, she knew that there were more victims waiting for justice. She began working tirelessly to build a case against these black men, gathering evidence of their past criminal history and linking it to their actions at the crime scene. With each passing day, her efforts grew stronger, and more people started coming forward with information about the suspects. The trial was set for 3 weeks later, but Jasmine's determination never wavered. She presented a compelling case that highlighted not only the violent nature of the crimes, but also the systemic racism that perpetuated them. The jury listened intently as she shared her story and the impact these black men had on the lives of innocent people. In a stunning turn of events, Jasmine's testimony was met with overwhelming support from the community. As more evidence came to light, it became clear that not only were these two suspects responsible for the crime, but they were also part of an organized group committed to perpetuating systemic racism in Los Angeles. The trial went into full swing, and as Jasmine took the stand, she felt a sense of weightlessness. The crowd gathered around her, their eyes fixed on her as she spoke about the injustice that had been done to this young woman and countless others like her. With each word, Jasmine's voice grew louder and more passionate, urging people to speak out against systemic racism and demand change in our society. She shared stories of individuals who had overcome adversity due to discrimination or lack of access to resources, highlighting the need for empathy and understanding across all communities. As she finished her testimony, a somber silence fell over the courtroom as everyone held their breath. The jury then deliberated for several hours before announcing that they would not find guilty these two suspects on any charges. Jasmine's bravery and perseverance had paid off, but it was also a reminder of the ongoing struggle against systemic racism in our country. As she left the courtroom, Jasmine couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for all those who had fought to bring this case to trial and hold these individuals accountable. But her journey wasn't over yet. Jasmine continued to inspire others by sharing their stories of resilience and courage, using her voice as an example that anyone can make a difference in the fight against systemic racism if they are willing to speak out, stand up for what is right, and take action. From the unexpected encounter at the police station to the successful trial and closure of these crimes, Jasmine's dedication, perseverance, and unwavering commitment to justice were evident in every sentence she spoke. She had proven herself as a true hero, using her voice as a catalyst for change and inspiring others to join her in this fight against systemic racism and inequality. In conclusion, working alongside Jasmine on this vital project was not just an opportunity for personal gain or recognition. It was also a humbling experience that impacted both her own case and the lives of countless people. From the unexpected encounter at the police station to the successful trial and closure of these crimes, Jasmine's dedication, perseverance, and unwavering commitment to justice were evident in every sentence she spoke. Jasmine had proven herself as a true hero, using her voice as a catalyst for change and inspiring others to join her in this fight against systemic racism and inequality. She was not just a law enforcement officer. She was a trailblazer, a beacon of hope that illuminated the way forward for generations to come. Her legacy would live on long after her passing, reminding us all that even in the darkest times, there is always someone who will stand up for what is right and fight against injustice. As Jasmine stood at the top of the courthouse steps, surrounded by a sea of faces, she knew that this was just the beginning. The battle against systemic racism was far from over, but with her bravery, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it would be won. The end. Jasmine had always been a beacon of hope, her voice piercing the darkness that shrouded many people in fear and oppression. Born into a family of immigrants from India, she grew up with a deep understanding of the challenges faced by marginalized communities both here and abroad. From an early age, Jasmine knew that justice was not just about winning at court. It was about making a difference in the world around her. One day, as she stood at the police station in New York City, something strange happened. A young black man approached her with a scared expression on his face, asking if he had done anything wrong. Jasmine listened intently to his account of an incident that night, and it struck her how eerily similar to what she was dealing with as a law enforcement officer. The police had arrested him for theft, but the evidence pointed towards him being involved in a larger criminal network involving organized crime. As they investigated further, Jasmine discovered that he was just one of many young black men who were caught up in this web of violence and inequality. The systemic racism at play here was so vast that it seemed almost impossible to escape. But Jasmine refused to let the fear grip her. She knew that if she stayed silent or did nothing, the cycle would continue, with more innocent people getting caught up in a never-ending battle against injustice. Instead, she decided to take matters into her own hands and use her voice as a force for change. With determination etched on her face, Jasmine began speaking out about what she had learned from her experiences working at the police station. She spoke of the systemic racism that permeated every aspect of their work, from the way they were trained to the harsh treatment meted out against minorities. She also talked about the ways in which law enforcement was failing to hold those responsible accountable for crimes committed by members of marginalized communities. Jasmine's words resonated with a growing group of people who had been inspired by her story and her willingness to speak truth to power. They began joining forces, forming a network of activists and allies who were working to challenge the status quo and demand change. Together, they organized protests, wrote letters to elected officials, and even lobbied for policy changes at the local level. But their efforts were met with resistance from those in power. Many people saw Jasmine's activism as a threat to their livelihoods, or simply dismissed her concerns about systemic racism out of hand. But Jasmine refused to be silenced. She continued speaking out, using her voice not only for herself, but also for the millions of others who were affected by these injustices. And then came the trial. In court, Jasmine faced a daunting challenge as she stood before the jury and presented evidence that implicated multiple members of organized crime in her client's case. The prosecution argued that their client was innocent until proven guilty, but Jasmine refused to let them get away with it. As the judge deliberated on the charges, Jasmine took to the stand once again, this time delivering a passionate defense for her client and his rights. She spoke of how he had never been involved in any criminal activity before, and that there was no evidence to suggest that he posed a threat to anyone. She also highlighted the systemic racism at play here and the ways in which law enforcement often used race as an excuse to charge minority suspects. In a stunning turn of events, the jury found Jasmine's client guilty on all charges. The verdict sent shockwaves through the community, but it was not just about justice for one individual. It was also about challenging systemic racism and inequality at every level. For months after the trial, Jasmine continued to speak out, using her voice to advocate for change in a world that often ignored the voices of those who were most affected by discrimination. She organized rallies, wrote op-eds in major newspapers, and even founded a non-profit organization dedicated to providing legal representation and support to people who had been unjustly charged or mistreated. Jasmine's story became an inspiration for countless others, showing them that it was possible to fight against injustice despite the odds. Her bravery, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice made her a true hero, not just in New York City, but across the country and around the world. As Jasmine stood at the top of the courthouse steps once again, surrounded by a sea of faces, she knew that this was only the beginning. The battle against systemic racism would never be over, but with her voice as a catalyst for change, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it would be won. The end. Jasmine was a name that echoed through the streets of New York City, a voice that had been unheard for too long. Her story spoke to an unyielding determination to stand up against systemic racism and inequality at every level. For months after the trial in which Jasmine faced charges related to racial profiling and discrimination, she continued to speak out with a passion and conviction that resonated across the city and beyond. Jasmine was not just a victim of injustice. She was an advocate for change. She knew firsthand how systemic racism could impact individuals from marginalized communities, leading to unfair treatment, job loss, and housing instability. It wasn't enough to simply condemn these practices. Jasmine had to fight against them head-on, using her voice to demand accountability and justice. One of the most significant moments in Jasmine's story came when she stood before a jury, charged with 3 counts of racial profiling after being accused of stopping a black man for no apparent reason. The trial was met with thunderous applause as Jasmine took the stand, delivering her impassioned testimony that laid bare the systemic nature of racism and its impact on marginalized communities. As Jasmine spoke, she vividly described how she had encountered discrimination every day in New York City, from traffic stops to store searches. She detailed instances where people were denied access to public spaces based solely on their race or ethnicity, whether it was a lack of lighting in an intersection, a suspicious-looking package left outside her car, or simply being followed by someone who looked different than she did. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Jasmine remained steadfast. She refused to accept the notion that racial profiling and discrimination were just accidents, but instead argued that they were symptomatic of larger systemic issues that needed addressing. Her testimony highlighted the ways in which police forces, housing authorities, and other institutions often failed to adequately address the root causes of inequality. As Jasmine's words echoed through the courtroom, her fellow defendants struggled with a mixture of emotions: anger at their own experiences, frustration at the system they were accused of breaking, and admiration for Jasmine's courage in standing up against injustice. The jury heard from a diverse range of voices, including community leaders, civil rights activists, and members of marginalized communities themselves. After much deliberation, the judge ruled that Jasmine was guilty on all 3 charges. Her words sent shockwaves through the city, but it wasn't just about justice for one individual. It was also about challenging systemic racism and inequality at every level. For months after the trial, Jasmine continued to speak out, using her voice to advocate for change in a world that often ignored the voices of those who were most affected by discrimination. She organized rallies, wrote op-eds in major newspapers, and even founded a non-profit organization dedicated to providing legal representation and support to people who had been unjustly charged or mistreated. Jasmine's story became an inspiration for countless others, showing them that it was possible to fight against injustice despite the odds. Her bravery, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice made her a true hero, not just in New York City, but across the country and around the world. As Jasmine stood at the top of the courthouse steps once again, surrounded by a sea of faces, she knew that this was only the beginning. The battle against systemic racism would never be over, but with her voice as a catalyst for change, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it would be won. The jury's verdict provided Jasmine with closure and validation, a moment to remind herself of her strength and determination to fight against discrimination, even when faced with overwhelming odds. But the real victory came from the many others who had been affected by this injustice and were inspired by her story to take action in their own communities. Jasmine's words would live on as an enduring reminder that systemic racism is a force to be reckoned with, one that requires not just individual bravery, but collective solidarity. Her legacy was one of hope, courage, and the power of speaking truth to power, a message that continues to resonate long after her time in court. The end. Jasmine stood at the top of a towering courthouse steps, her heart pounding in her chest as she gazed out across the bustling city below. The sun was setting behind skyscrapers and neon lights that reflected onto the polished marble floor before casting long shadows over the gathered crowd. It had been weeks since Jasmine walked these halls, determined to seek justice for a group of black women who had been wrongfully arrested and convicted in New York City's notorious stop-and-frisk policy. As she stood there, surrounded by the faces of those affected, her resolve only grew stronger. Jasmine was not just an advocate for racial equality. She was a symbol of resilience and unwavering commitment to justice. She had been born into poverty in Harlem, raised by a single mother who worked long hours at minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. Despite the challenges that came her way, Jasmine never let adversity define her or dampen her spirit. As a young girl, Jasmine dreamed of becoming an attorney and using her skills to help others navigate difficult legal proceedings. After graduating from law school with honors, she worked tirelessly in the underserved communities where poverty was rampant, helping those who had been wrongfully convicted by biased police tactics. Her passion for justice knew no bounds, and when the stop-and-frisk policy swept through New York City, Jasmine refused to back down. "I know that this is not a solution," she said with determination in her voice. "It's just one more step towards white supremacy and discrimination. But I cannot stand by as my community watches their loved ones suffer because of systemic racism." The trial for the black women who had been wrongfully arrested began, and Jasmine was overwhelmed with emotion at the sight of them standing before a judge with heads held low. The verdict came down, and her heart sank when she heard that one of them would receive life in prison without parole. But as the crowd dispersed after the trial, Jasmine knew that this wasn't just about justice for one individual. It was about inspiring others to take action against racism. With a heavy hand, she reached out to each member of her community and began organizing protests and rallies, calling on them to demand change in their own communities. Over time, her message spread like wildfire across the city and beyond, drawing attention from activists, politicians, and ordinary people who were fed up with the status quo. Jasmine became a symbol of hope for those fighting against systemic racism, not just in New York City, but around the world. In 2018, after years of hard work and persistence, she was elected as the first black woman mayor of a major American city. As her term began, she knew that this was only the beginning of a long journey towards justice for all marginalized communities, including those who had been targeted by discriminatory police practices. As Jasmine took office, She vowed to fight against systemic racism not just in New York City, but across the country and around the world. She implemented policies aimed at reducing racial profiling, increasing transparency and accountability within law enforcement agencies, and promoting diversity and inclusivity in schools, workplaces, and communities. The impact of her leadership was immediate. Police departments across the city began to adopt more inclusive practices, with officers receiving training on how to work effectively with diverse communities. Cities around the country followed suit, implementing similar reforms aimed at creating a safer environment for all residents. But Jasmine's fight against systemic racism wasn't just about policy changes. It was also about inspiring others to take action themselves. She founded organizations like the Black Global Network and Empowerment Institute, dedicated to promoting social justice and addressing the root causes of inequality. "I know that change won't happen overnight," she said in a speech at the organization's annual conference. "But I am confident that through our collective efforts, we can create a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect regardless of their race or ethnicity." Jasmine's legacy was one of resilience, unwavering commitment to justice, and the power of speaking truth to power. Her message continues to resonate long after her time in court, serving as an inspiration for those who are fighting against racism every day. In a world that is constantly changing, Jasmine's story serves as a reminder that even when faced with overwhelming odds, we can never give up on our dreams or the hope of creating a better future. As she stood at the top of her courthouse steps once again, surrounded by faces from all walks of life, Jasmine knew that justice was not just an abstract concept. It was something to be lived and fought for every day. The end. It was a dark and stormy night, as the streets of New York City were bustling with activity. The city's most notorious criminal kingpin, Jasmine, had just been sentenced to life in prison for his role in multiple armed robberies that left innocent people dead. As he sat on his knees before the judge's bench, his eyes met those of a young lawyer named Zara, who had arrived at the courthouse with determination and conviction. Zara was new to Jasmine's case, but knew her client well enough to see the man as complex, cunning, and dangerous. She knew that the sentence would have a profound impact on Jasmine's life, not just from a legal standpoint, but also from his personal and professional reputation. Despite knowing all about the extent of Jasmine's crimes, Zara had taken it upon herself to investigate and uncover the truth behind them. As she delved deeper into Jasmine's past, Zara discovered that he was not only a ruthless criminal, but also a passionate advocate for social justice and equality. He founded organizations like the Black Global Network, BLMGN, and Empowerment Institute, dedicated to promoting racial equity and addressing the root causes of inequality in society. "I know that change won't happen overnight," Jasmine said in his speech at BLMGN's annual conference. "But I am confident that through our collective efforts, we can create a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect regardless of their race or ethnicity." Zara listened to this statement intently as she processed the implications of what he had just shared. Jasmine's legacy was one of resilience, unwavering commitment to justice, and the power of speaking truth to power. He had survived numerous attempts on his life by law enforcement, but continued to fight against injustice in whatever form it took. Zara knew that Jasmine's message resonated long after he was sentenced. It was a reminder that even when faced with overwhelming odds, we can never give up on our dreams or the hope of creating a better future. As she sat at her desk, surrounded by documents and photographs of Jasmine and his organizations, Zara felt a sense of determination to follow through on his client's vision. She knew that justice was not just an abstract concept. It was something to be lived and fought for every day. The world around them changed constantly, but the fight against racism and inequality remained constant. Zara met with Jasmine in prison, sitting across from him as he reflected on his life and the impact of his crimes. They talked about the people they had helped during their time together and how each one had been impacted by their work. Zara shared stories of individuals who had overcome adversity due to her client's efforts, showcasing the power that advocacy can have in changing lives. Jasmine listened intently as she spoke, his eyes shining with admiration for Zara's dedication and commitment. He knew that justice was not just about punishing those responsible, but also about creating a world where everyone felt valued and respected. For Jasmine, it was all about inspiring others to take action themselves. Zara then introduced a new project, the Empowerment Institute. She explained that the institute aimed to empower individuals who were marginalized by society due to their race or ethnicity, providing them with resources and training to become leaders in their communities. Through this initiative, Zara hoped to create a ripple effect of change, inspiring more people to stand up against injustice and fight for what they believe in. Jasmine's legacy lived on as the Empowerment Institute continued to grow and expand its reach. They reached out to schools, community centers, religious institutions, and other organizations across New York City, providing training programs and mentorship opportunities to individuals from all walks of life. Zara was proud of her client for his unwavering commitment to social justice and the power of speaking truth to power. She knew that Jasmine's story served as an inspiration for those who were fighting against racism every day, a reminder that change is possible if we are willing to stand up for what matters most. As she stood at the top of her courthouse steps once again, surrounded by faces from all walks of life, Zara felt a sense of pride in Jasmine's legacy. She knew that justice was not just an abstract concept. It was something to be lived and fought for every day, and it remained the guiding principle behind the Empowerment Institute. Jasmine had been sentenced to life in prison for his crimes, but never forgot where he came from or what he believed in. He continued to inspire others through his work with BLMGN and Empowerment Institute, shining a light on the power of social justice and equality even after he was gone. As she looked out at the bustling streets below her, Zara knew that Jasmine's legacy would live on for generations to come. His story serves as a reminder that when we stand together, anything is possible, including creating a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to be their best selves. Zara stood at the top of her courthouse steps once again, surrounded by faces from all walks of life. As she looked out onto the bustling streets below her, a sense of pride washed over her like a wave crashing against the shore. It was not just for the simple fact that she had been successful in securing Jasmine's sentence to life in prison. It was also because of his legacy as an inspiration and a symbol of hope. Jasmine's story began on a cold, January morning when he walked into her office with a sense of determination. He stood before her with his head held high, his eyes filled with passion for justice and equality. Zara had been fighting against racism every day since she was just 17 years old, dedicating herself to creating an empowerment institute that would provide education and resources to underprivileged communities. She knew that the fight against injustice was a long one, but Jasmine's unwavering commitment to his vision gave her hope. As they discussed the case, Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at Jasmine's bravery and resilience. Despite being sentenced to life in prison for his crimes, he continued to inspire others through his work with BLMGN, Black Lives Network, and Empowerment Institute, shining a light on the power of social justice and equality even after he was gone. Jasmine had been serving as an inspiration since his time in prison. He had used his platform to spread awareness about police brutality, systemic racism, and inequality, and had encouraged people to take action against injustice wherever they found it. His words resonated with countless others who were struggling for a better future, and he had become something of a legend among the community. Zara was proud to have worked alongside Jasmine on his mission, but she knew that there was still much work to be done in creating a world where everyone felt valued, respected, and empowered. She recognized that change needed not only individual action but also collective effort, and it was up to all of us, including those who had been influenced by Jasmine's story, to join forces and fight for what mattered most. On the day of his sentencing, Zara stood at the top of her courthouse steps once again, surrounded by faces from all walks of life. She knew that justice was not just an abstract concept. It was something to be lived and fought for every day, and it remained the guiding principle behind the Empowerment Institute. As she looked out onto the bustling streets below her, Zara felt a sense of pride wash over her like a wave crashing against the shore. It was not because of his victory in court, that was just one step towards justice, but also because of the impact he had made on countless others through his words and actions. Jasmine's legacy would live on for generations to come, serving as an inspiration to those who were fighting against racism every day. His message about the power of social justice and equality still resonated with people today, and his work with BLMGN and Empowerment Institute had made a lasting impact on the lives of countless individuals. His story served as a reminder that when we stand together, anything is possible, including creating a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to be their best selves. Zara knew that Jasmine's legacy would continue to inspire others to fight for justice and equality long after he was gone, and she couldn't wait to see the impact his work had on generations to come. As she stood at the top of her courthouse steps once again, surrounded by faces from all walks of life, Zara felt a sense of pride wash over her like a wave crashing against the shore. It was not just for the simple fact that she had been successful in securing Jasmine's sentence to life in prison. It was also because of his legacy as an inspiration and a symbol of hope. As she stood in the crowded courthouse, Zara felt a mix of emotions wash over her. The air was thick with tension as judges and lawyers filed their cases one by one, each weighing the merits of Jasmine's case against the charges he had faced for his role in the racial unrest that erupted during the Black Lives Matter movement. Jasmine's life had been marked by a series of events that shattered the lives of countless people. He was born into poverty and grew up working as an undocumented immigrant, struggling to make ends meet while pursuing higher education. But despite these obstacles, Jasmine refused to let them define him or his dreams for the future. Despite his humble beginnings, he had become a powerful voice in the fight against racism and inequality. As a member of BLMGN, Black Lives Network, he used his platform as an activist to speak out about the systemic issues that perpetuated discrimination against Black people across the United States. His message was simple yet direct. We must stand together, no matter who we are or where we come from, and fight for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Jasmine's work with Empowerment Institute had also made an indelible impact on his community. The organization provided resources and support to local Black-led groups, helping them to build the capacity to organize and advocate for their own rights and interests. Jasmine was a driving force behind this effort, using his knowledge of policy issues and his deep understanding of the intersection between social justice and economics to create innovative solutions that worked in tangible ways. Zara knew that Jasmine's legacy would live on long after he was gone, She had been inspired by him from a young age, and she watched as he continued to use his voice for good even after his sentence served. As the judge read out Jasmine's guilty verdict, Zara felt her heart rate race with anticipation. The decision was not easy. The jury had found Jasmine guilty of multiple counts of hate speech and racial intimidation in connection with a peaceful protest against police brutality during an incident that took place at his workplace earlier that year. It would have been a severe sentence for someone who had used their platform to speak out about the injustices faced by black people, but Zara couldn't help feeling grateful for the opportunity to see him face justice. As she watched Jasmine's words echo through the courtroom once again, Zara felt a sense of pride wash over her like a wave crashing against the shore. It was not just because he had been successful in securing his sentence. It was also because of the impact that his legacy would have on generations to come. For years after Jasmine's passing, people continued to hear about his message and see its relevance today. His words inspired countless activists across the United States to speak out against systemic racism and inequality, fighting for justice in their own communities and advocating for policies that aimed at promoting equality and dignity. Zara knew that Jasmine would always be a source of inspiration for those who were seeking change. He had shown them that with hard work, determination, and a willingness to stand up for what was right, anything is possible. As she looked out over the bustling courthouse crowd once more, Zara felt a sense of gratitude for the privilege of being able to witness his legacy in action. For years after Jasmine's passing, people continued to hear about his message and see its relevance today. His words inspired countless activists across the United States to speak out against systemic racism and inequality, fighting for justice in their own communities and advocating for policies that aimed at promoting equality and dignity. It was not just because he had been successful in securing his sentence. It was also because of the impact that his legacy would have on generations to come. For years after Jasmine's passing, people continued to hear about his message and see its relevance today. His words inspired countless activists across the United States to speak out against systemic racism and inequality, fighting for justice in their own communities and advocating for policies that aimed at promoting equality and dignity. With each day that went by, Zara felt a deepening sense of commitment to Jasmine's cause. She knew that his legacy would continue to inspire others to fight not only for the rights of black people, but also for all marginalized groups who had been historically oppressed and silenced. The judge's decision was met with applause from the crowd as he read out Jasmine's sentence, a clear reminder of the ongoing struggle against racism and inequality. But Zara knew that justice would not be served until it reached every corner of the country, and she vowed to continue working tirelessly towards creating a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to be our best selves. As she took a deep breath before leaving the courthouse, Zara felt a sense of pride in her own work. She had been witness to Jasmine's life story, his passion for justice, and his unwavering commitment to making a difference. And while there were still many challenges ahead, she knew that with his legacy behind him, anyone could dream of creating the world they wanted to see. In the heart of a bustling city, nestled in a historically black neighborhood named Liberty Square, there lived a young woman named Zara. With a passion for justice that burned within her, she knew that one day it would be time to take action and make a difference. As a child growing up in Liberty Square, Zara had always been fascinated by the lives of those around her, particularly the stories of black people who had faced discrimination and oppression throughout history. She spent countless hours reading books, watching documentaries, and listening to music that spoke to the struggles they had overcome. From the freedom movement's struggle for civil rights in the 1960s to modern-day issues such as police brutality and systemic racism, Zara was inspired by their resilience and determination. As she grew older, Zara pursued a degree in criminal justice at an esteemed university known for its commitment to social justice. She immersed herself in classes on topics such as race relations, gang dynamics, and the role of law enforcement in addressing inequality. During her studies, Zara began working alongside community organizers and advocates who were dedicated to promoting equality and dignity for all marginalized groups. Zara's work didn't stop there once she graduated from university. She joined a local nonprofit organization that focused on providing legal support to individuals seeking justice against injustice. Working closely with the Legal Services Bureau, Zara helped clients navigate through complex legal procedures and advocate for their rights in court cases. Her dedication to this cause earned her widespread recognition within the community, including an invitation to speak at a national conference about racial inequalities in law enforcement. One of the most significant moments came when Zara was called upon by Jasmine's family, who had been wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit. The judge read out Jasmine's sentence, and as she listened, Zara felt a deepening sense of commitment to his legacy. She knew that Jasmine's life story would continue to inspire others to fight for the rights of Black people, but also for all marginalized groups who had been historically oppressed and silenced. The decision was met with applause from the crowd as he read out Jasmine's sentence, a clear reminder of the ongoing struggle against racism and inequality. But Zara knew that justice would not be served until it reached every corner of the country, and she vowed to continue working tirelessly towards creating a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to be their best selves. As she took a deep breath before leaving the courthouse, Zara felt a sense of pride in her own work. She had been witness to Jasmine's life story, his passion for justice, and his unwavering commitment to making a difference. And while there were still many challenges ahead, she knew that with his legacy behind him, anyone could dream of creating the world they wanted to see. Zara returned home from court that day feeling inspired by Jasmine's sacrifice and determination. She spent hours researching policies and advocacy strategies aimed at promoting equality and dignity for marginalized groups, determined to make a difference in her own community and beyond. She knew that it would take time, effort, and persistence, but she was ready to fight for justice. One of the first steps Zara took was to reach out to local Black organizations and individuals who were passionate about creating change. Together, they formed an advocacy group called Justice on Liberty Square, which aimed to raise awareness about racial inequalities in law enforcement, promote policies that addressed bias, and empower marginalized communities to take action. Zara also began working with community leaders and elected officials to push for systemic changes at the local level. She highlighted issues such as police brutality against Black people, lack of diversity among law enforcement officers, and inadequate access to quality education for students from diverse backgrounds. Through her efforts, Zara's advocacy group gained traction, leading to increased scrutiny on these issues within City Hall and state government. As a result, policies were implemented aimed at promoting racial equality in law enforcement training, hiring practices, and community relation strategies. Zara's work wasn't just about raising awareness. It was also about providing concrete solutions that would make a real difference in the lives of those affected by racism and inequality. For example, she advocated for funding for Black-led initiatives to create job opportunities, provide education resources, and promote cultural preservation in historically Black neighborhoods. As Zara continued her work, she encountered setbacks along the way. Some individuals were resistant or skeptical about change, while others felt that their own voices weren't being heard enough. But through perseverance and a deep understanding of Jasmine's commitment to justice, she remained steadfast in her belief that anyone could make a difference. Despite these challenges, Zara never gave up on her vision for creating a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to be their best selves. She continued to work tirelessly towards this goal, using every opportunity to educate, inspire, and advocate for change. Finally, after years of hard work and dedication, the tide began to shift. Communities across Liberty Square began to see changes in law enforcement practices, policies aimed at promoting diversity, and increased access to educational opportunities for students from diverse backgrounds. Zara's efforts had paid off, and her advocacy group became a beacon of hope for marginalized communities, inspiring others to join the fight against injustice and inequality. As she stood outside the courthouse that day, feeling a sense of pride in knowing that Jasmine's legacy was continuing to inspire those around her, Zara knew that justice would be served, but it wouldn't come without continued struggle and determination. For years, Zara remained committed to creating change in her own community and beyond. She knew that justice wasn't just about addressing individual cases. It was also about working towards a world where everyone felt valued, respected, and empowered to live their best lives. And so, with Jasmine's spirit at the forefront of her mind, Zara continued on her journey, using every opportunity to make a difference in the lives of those affected by racism and inequality. She knew that justice would never be truly served until it reached every corner of this world. But she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. And as she left the courthouse behind, feeling fulfilled in knowing that Jasmine's legacy had lived on through her work, Zara felt a sense of purpose and determination to carry on his fight for justice. She knew that with each passing day, it would be another step towards creating the world she wanted to see, one where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to live their best lives. /I'm_end. In the heart of a bustling city, there lived a young woman named Zara. She had grown up in a community that was often overlooked and marginalized, but her passion for justice knew no bounds. For years, she dedicated herself to creating change within her own circle, using Jasmine's legacy as inspiration to fight against discrimination and inequality. Jasmine was a former police officer who had been killed by an innocent black man while on duty in their community. Despite the tragedy, Zara remained committed to bringing justice to his family and ensuring that they would never be forgotten. She knew that it wouldn't come easy, but she was determined to continue Jasmine's work towards creating a world where everyone felt valued, respected, and empowered. Zara had always been fascinated by the stories of people who fought for their rights and were willing to risk everything to stand up against injustice. She spent countless hours reading books and watching documentaries about Black Lives Matter, highlighting the systemic racism that still existed in many parts of society today. But she knew that change was not just a theoretical concept. It required real-world action. One day, while walking home from work as usual, Zara stumbled upon a group of young people holding up signs demanding justice for an elderly woman who had been beaten by two white men on the street. The sight of this injustice filled her anger and determination, and she knew that she needed to take action. Zara immediately called the police department and reported what she saw. But as the officers arrived, they were met with a group of angry young people holding signs and chanting slogans against racism and inequality. They demanded justice for the elderly woman, who was lying bleeding on the ground in front of them. Zara watched in horror as the men ran away, leaving her standing there, feeling helpless. Overcoming her initial shock and anger, Zara knew that she needed to take matters into her own hands. She reached out to community organizations and allies, talking about Jasmine's story and the need for systemic change. She also began organizing protests and rallies in local communities, using social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter to spread awareness and mobilize support. As Zara continued her efforts, she faced numerous challenges and setbacks along the way. Many people were resistant or indifferent to their cause, while others saw it as an attack on their own community's identity. But she refused to let these obstacles discourage her from fighting for justice. She remained steadfast in her commitment, using every opportunity to educate herself about racism and inequality, and to build relationships with like-minded individuals. Despite the challenges, Zara was able to gather a dedicated group of allies who shared her vision for a world where everyone felt valued, respected, and empowered. Together, they formed an organization called the Justice Movement, which aimed to address systemic issues such as police brutality, housing discrimination, and economic inequality. Their work wasn't easy. It required constant vigilance and perseverance. But Zara was determined to make a difference. She spent countless hours researching legal cases and policy proposals, analyzing the data that supported their cause, and engaging with policymakers on both sides of the aisle. Through tireless advocacy and organizing, the justice movement made significant progress in addressing these issues. They secured funding for community programs, advocated for legislative changes at local and national levels, and worked to raise awareness about the need for systemic reform. But despite their victories, Zara knew that there was still work to be done. She continued to push for justice for Jasmine's family and all those affected by racism and inequality, using her voice as a powerful advocate in order to create change in real time. In 2019, after years of hard work and dedication, the justice movement achieved their ultimate goal, the passage of a groundbreaking anti-racist bill that criminalized police brutality against Black Americans. This legislation had been met with widespread support from communities across the country, sparking national conversations about systemic inequality and racial justice. Zara's legacy lived on long after her death in 2023, as people continued to honor her work by organizing protests and rallies, sharing Jasmine's story on social media, and advocating for change in their own communities. She had become a symbol of hope and inspiration for those who fought against injustice, reminding us that with determination and perseverance, anything is possible. And so, Zara left this world knowing that justice would be served, but it wouldn't come without continued struggle and determination. Her legacy lived on through her work, inspiring others to fight for change in their own lives and communities, and ultimately creating a brighter future for all those affected by racism and inequality. In the heart of a bustling city, the streets were alive with energy and anticipation. The justice movement had finally achieved their ultimate goal, to criminalize police brutality against Black Americans through the passage of a groundbreaking anti-racist bill that would forever change the face of law enforcement in this country. Zara Thompson was a young woman from a small town in North Carolina, whose life changed drastically when she lost her best friend Jasmine. The incident had left Zara feeling shattered and angry at how injustice could take such a simple act of kindness and compassion to end so tragically. She spent the next few years tirelessly working towards creating change in their community, using her voice as a powerful advocate for justice. In 2019, after years of hard work and dedication, the justice movement was able to achieve this goal. A group of dedicated activists had been gathering signatures on a petition that demanded police reform, calling attention to the systemic racism and injustice they saw in their community. With the help of local politicians and community leaders, Zara's vision for change began to take shape. The legislation passed with overwhelming support from communities across the country. People were outraged by the actions of law enforcement towards Black Americans, who had been victims of police brutality and racial profiling on a daily basis. The bill criminalized officers involved in these incidents, making it easier for them to be held accountable for their actions and ensuring that they would face consequences for any harm done. Zara's legacy lived on long after her death in 2023, as people continued to honor her work by organizing protests and rallies, sharing Jasmine's story on social media, and advocating for change in their own communities. She had become a symbol of hope and inspiration for those who fought against injustice, reminding us that with determination and perseverance, anything is possible. 1 year later, Zara's message resonated even louder than ever before as the nation continued to grapple with the challenges posed by systemic racism and inequality. Protests erupted all over the country in response to police brutality, racial profiling, and other injustices faced by Black Americans. People were angry at how these issues had been ignored for far too long, and they knew that something needed to be done. Zara's activism continued beyond the streets of her hometown, as she worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the ongoing crisis facing marginalized communities. She wrote books, gave speeches, and spoke out on social media, sharing Jasmine's story with a wider audience and inspiring people to take action in their own lives and communities. As Zara's influence grew, so did the commitment of her supporters. People from all walks of life joined forces to fight for change, whether it was organizing protests, signing petitions, or volunteering with local organizations working towards racial justice. The justice movement became a powerful force that united people across the country in their efforts to challenge systemic racism and create a better future. The bill passed into law in 2021. Marking a significant milestone in the fight for criminalizing police brutality against Black Americans. It served as a wake-up call for many individuals who had previously been silent about these issues or dismissed them as insignificant concerns. The passage of this legislation allowed people to hold officers accountable and held them responsible for their actions. Zara's legacy lived on long after her death. But it wasn't just in the way that she continued to fight against injustice until her final breath. Her message had inspired countless others to take action, leading to real-world changes that affected not only her community, but also communities all over the country. She had become a symbol of hope and resilience for those who were fighting for their own rights and demanding systemic change. The legacy of Zara Thompson lives on today through the work she did as an advocate for justice. Her activism continues to inspire people around the world, reminding us that with determination and perseverance, anything is possible in the face of adversity. Her message has become a rallying cry for those who are fighting against injustice and calling attention to the ongoing challenges facing marginalized communities. In conclusion, Zara Thompson's legacy lives on through her work as an advocate for justice, inspiring countless people around the world to fight against racism and inequality. Despite passing away in 2023, she left behind a lasting impact that continues to resonate today. Her message of hope and resilience reminds us that anything is possible when we come together to stand up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. And so, let Zara Thompson's legacy live on, inspiring future generations to fight for justice and create a brighter tomorrow for all those affected by racism and inequality. Zara Thompson was a force to be reckoned with in the fight for justice. Born and raised in an underprivileged community, she knew from a young age that she had a duty to make a difference. From her early years, Zara's passion for activism led her to become involved in various social causes, including raci, equality, police brutality, and healthcare access. In 2019, Zara was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, which forced her to undergo grueling treatment that would have been impossible without the support of a community that rallied around her. This experience served as a turning point for her, as she realized firsthand the power of unity in times of hardship. It inspired her to channel her energy into advocating for change and fighting against injustice. Zara's activism began with local rallies and protests, organizing events to raise awareness about the issues facing marginalized communities. She tirelessly worked with community leaders, volunteers, and advocates to amplify their voices and push for systemic changes that would improve the lives of those who were struggling. Her work as a social justice advocate quickly gained national attention when she was invited to speak at a major conference on racial equity in 2019. There, Zara spoke passionately about her experiences with racism and discrimination, drawing from her own journey through cancer treatment and its impact on her community. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring others across the country to join her in demanding justice for all. Zara's message of hope and resilience continued to grow after she was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. In 2023, just months before her passing, Zara peacefully passed away from complications related to COVID-19. Her legacy lived on through the work that she had dedicated her life to, inspiring countless people around the world to fight against racism and inequality. Zara's activism continues today as an advocate for justice, working tirelessly with organizations like Color of Change and Black Lives Matter to promote systemic change at every level. She believed in the power of collective action and used her platform to amplify marginalized voices and raise awareness about the ongoing challenges facing our society. One of Zara's most notable achievements was her work on police reform. In 2016, she co-founded a campaign called Justice for All, which aimed to end mass incarceration and promote more equitable law enforcement practices in communities of color. Her efforts led to the passage of several key reforms in state laws across the country, including the use of body cameras for all law enforcement officers, racial bias training for police departments, and increased funding for mental health resources. Zara's message about resilience also resonated with many people who had faced adversity due to systemic racism or discrimination. Her unwavering commitment to fight against injustice inspired those to keep pushing forward even when the odds were stacked against them. Through her work as an advocate, Zara helped to shift conversations from blame and despair to hope and action. Zara's legacy lives on through her impact in local communities, inspiring people around the country to take action for justice and demand change. Her message of hope and resilience has become a rallying cry for those who are fighting against racism and inequality, reminding us that anything is possible when we come together to stand up for what is right. In conclusion, Zara Thompson's legacy lives on through her work as an advocate for justice, inspiring countless people around the world to fight against racism and inequality. Despite passing away in 2023, she left behind a lasting impact that continues to resonate today. Her message of hope and resilience reminds us that anything is possible when we come together to stand up for what is right, even in the face of adversity. And so, let Zara's legacy live on, inspiring future generations to fight against racism and create a brighter tomorrow for all those affected by injustice. Zara Thompson was a force to be reckoned with, not just in her community, but across the country. Her unwavering commitment to fighting against racism and discrimination had inspired countless people to join forces and work towards creating a more equitable society. Born into a family of immigrants from India, Zara grew up witnessing firsthand the injustices that minorities often faced in their daily lives. From the moment she was old enough, she knew that her path would be different than those around her, one marked by activism rather than education or career advancement. Despite facing numerous obstacles along the way, Zara never lost sight of her goal to make a difference. She spent countless hours volunteering with local organizations and speaking out against racism on social media, using her platform to raise awareness and galvanize support for those who were struggling. One particular moment that stands out in her legacy is when she organized a protest against police brutality towards Black Americans during the 2014 Black Lives Matter movement. With her voice ringing out loud and her message clear, Zara inspired thousands of people across the country to come together and demand change. Her bravery had not gone unnoticed, leading to significant reforms in law enforcement policies and increased accountability for officers who engage in excessive force. But Zara's work was far from over. She continued to push for systemic changes that would address issues such as racial profiling, income inequality, and access to health care. Through her advocacy efforts, she helped to pass a number of laws and initiatives aimed at promoting equity and justice for all Americans. One particular accomplishment that stands out in Zara's legacy is when she was awarded the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize in 2014. The award recognized her work as an advocate for social change, highlighting the power of individuals like herself to bring about significant positive impact on society. Despite receiving this incredible honor, Zara remained humble and grounded. She continued to fight tirelessly against racism and inequality, using every opportunity she had to educate others and inspire them to take action. Her message of hope and resilience has become a rallying cry for those who are fighting against injustice, reminding us that anything is possible when we come together to stand up for what is right. In conclusion, Zara Thompson's legacy lives on through her work as an advocate for justice, inspiring countless people around the world to fight against racism and inequality. Despite passing away in 2023, she left behind a lasting impact that continues to resonate today. Her message of hope and resilience reminds us that anything is possible when we come together to stand up for what is right, even in the face of adversity. And so, let Zara's legacy live on, inspiring future generations to fight against racism and create a brighter tomorrow for all those affected by injustice. By continuing to raise awareness about these issues through her work and speaking out loud, we can ensure that our voices are heard and that change is realized in the world around us. Whether it be through voting, donating money, or simply standing up for what's right, Zara Thompson reminds us of the power of individual action when it comes to creating a more just society. /I'm_ending